Welcome everyone, Tactical Lich here, and today we are on the 5th and final game between Chief and the Chosen One on the best of 5 series in the BBB Season 1 tournament. Now for the army builds, Chief is going for a super wide Dark Elf army, Dread Spears mixed in with Bleak Swords, very common pick these days, supported by a bunch of Dark Riders as a mobility force, and a bunch of Dark Shards at the back. Their armor-piercing crossbows would be very effective against the Tomb King's constructs. Further back, there are even more armor-piercing firepower in the form of Reaper bolt throwers. These precision artillery are great at countering any other artillery, sniping them out and shutting them down from long range, and which is the main forces to counteract the Screaming Skull catapults on the Tomb King side today. On the flanks, a couple Dread Spears to protect the artillery, and on the far side, a single Vanguard deployed Dark Rider flanking around trying to get into position for rear charges. In the front line, taking some eye lasers and Spirit Leech is Malekith here, leading the army on Seraphon, bringing in Part of Darkness, the staple pick Soul Stealer, as well as other abilities like Gaze of Malice and Stand Your Ground. He'll be retreating away from the Tomb King's firepower for now. As for the Chosen One's Tomb King's army, we have a front line of Skeleton Warriors mixed in with Tomb Gods and Skeleton Spears, forming quite a boxy formation here, protecting the Screaming Skull catapults. Also a couple Sepulchral Stalkers. They're not exactly amazing in melee combat, but they're eye lasers if they can get into range and shoot at the required target. Those armor-piercing missiles can deal some massive damage. A few shots of the eye lasers plus Spirit Leech is already enough to cut down 1/4 of the HP of Malekith. As for mobility, we have a bunch of carrions in the skies, and on the ground a mixture of skeleton horses and Hekara horsemen. Leading the army, we have the infamous Arcane the Black on his horse, bringing in a bunch of spells including Fate of Buna, Spirit Leech, as well as a bunch of skeleton summons, very staple stuff from the Tomb King's Lord. As we introduce the army, the artillery combat is already underway. You can see the Dark Shards and the Bleak Swords have taken noticeable damage from all the Screaming Skull bombardment, but with the Reaper bolt thrower pushing into range and start dismantling the Screaming Skulls, the artillery of the Tomb Kings might be in big trouble here. They're switching their targets to the Reaper bolt throwers, trying to rout off the artillery crew with their tech cover leadership debuff. But the problem is that High Elf leadership is pretty solid, and the Tomb King's bombardments doesn't deal that much damage against artillery models. So the Tomb Kings doubles down, trying to rout off the artillery with a dive bombing from the carrions. But a nice reaction from Chief using the 2 Dark Riders standing around the artillery, charging straight into the carrions and will be wrecking them in melee combat. Of course, this kind of blobbing up also means that the Screaming Skulls can do a bit more extra damage to the Dark Riders, but then this is all worth it as the Reaper bolt throwers are still standing, shooting away at the Screaming Skull catapults and countering enemy artillery, taking out these static targets with deadly efficiency. And as you can see here, most of the Screaming Skull catapults are basically dismantled, down to 1 model on this one and the other one down to 2 models, while Malekith standing a little bit too close to the Sepulchral Stalkers who have definitely pushed up trying to snipe out Malekith. Will be forcing Malekith and Seraphon to retreat as he has taken even more damage from the eye lasers and Spirit Leech from Arcane the Black. Now with the Dark Shards standing here shooting at the Sepulchral Stalkers who have strayed a little too close to their firing range, Arcane the Black will be responding with a skeleton summon, dropping right on top of these Dark Shards and tying them down in melee combat, taking some attrition damage in this melee fight. Unfortunately for the Dark Shards, there are no nearby friendlies who are free to come in and screen out those skeletons, so unfortunately they will be taken down in melee combat. Skeleton Horsemen and Hekara Horsemen trying to silence these Dark Shards, but a countercharge from the Dark Riders have plugged this gap between the Dark Elf formations. The Dark Shards will be secured while the Skeleton Cavalry will be eliminated. At the back here, Reaper bolt thrower being routed by some dive bombing carrions, but with the Dark Riders and Dread Spears finishing off the carrions, the artillery crew might regroup and rearm the artillery models once again. Now in the front line, some skeleton horses are forgotten, taking some pretty nasty damage from the Dark Shards and a breath attack from Malekith. While on the other side, Sepulchral Stalkers are now kiting away trying to avoid melee engagement, as the Skeleton Spears and the Hekara Horsemen are trying to intercept all kinds of melee threats pressuring the Tomb King's backline. While Malekith is just sitting at the back, he doesn't really need to do much here as the Tomb King's front line is being slowly cut down by the Dark Elf infantry, especially now that Murderous Prowess is now activated. Juicing up that melee attack on all of these Dark Elf troops, the skeleton warriors will not be a big challenge here, and the tomb gods are also taking pretty nasty damage in this kind of combat attrition here due to the juiced up melee attack. On top of that, Soul Stealer is dropped in, draining the health away of the horsemen as well as the tomb gods, while topping up Malekith's own health. On the flank, the Bleak Swords almost finish off the skeletons, so they should be able to move on to the next target. Sepulchral Stalkers, they are trying to retreat away from the Bleak Swords, and they are now the target of the Reaper Bolt Throwers, doing some massive damage to the Sepulchral Stalkers with their anti-armor, anti-large shots. Now there is a single Tomb Guard managed to break into the Dark Elf backline, but the Dread Spears will be holding them back while the Dark Shards are now shooting them in the rear, ignoring their silver shields and maximize that damage output. Now in the front line, Sepulchral Stalkers being caught by Dark Riders, while the Dark Shards have pushed up close enough to do some nasty damage, shooting them down with their armor-piercing crossbows. There's just not a lot of stuff these Sepulchral Stalkers can do about it, since their shots are mostly anti-single entity, basically high damage but small explosions, while Malekith is just sitting all the way out of their range, and all kinds of Dark Elf infantry and mobility are trying to tie them in combat, and their only option is to run away. They are unable to fire while moving, so that means most of their ammunition remains unused. At least a little good news for the Tomb Kings, the Murderous Prowess is deactivating, while their own faction ability and Ushapti Summon is dropped onto a Reaper Bolt Thrower crew. The Chosen One invested a lot of resources trying to shut down the Reaper Bolt Throwers, but I'm afraid that wasn't enough and the Reaper Bolt Throwers have done their job. As you can see here, Sepulchral Stalkers have already taken significant damage on the verge of breaking, and the other Sepulchral Stalker is also being chased off by the Bleak Swords and Dark Riders. All the Screaming Skull catapults are also sniped out, so the Bolt Throwers have definitely left a painful mark on the Tomb King's army. The worst thing is that the Tomb King's army hasn't done enough damage. Malekith is still quite healthy, above half health, and there's still a lot of healing for him to go with all those Soul Stealers. Arkan the Black might be decent in melee compared to other caster lords, but against a Black Dragon, yeah, the only option for him is to run away. On the side, some Dark Shards are being charged by some summoned Ushaptis, but they are almost out of time here, down to around 20 seconds left on the battlefield, also being shot at by the Dark Shards. Their presence wouldn't be changing the fight much. At the same time, Malekith and Seraphon is still giving chase to the Tomb King's leadership. Arkan the Black is just trying his best to run for his life, dropping in Spirit Leech here and there, hoping to drain away Malekith's health, but unfortunately that is just not quite enough here. Moreover, the summoned Ushaptis have disintegrated, leaving a dent in the Tomb King's balance of power, while the Druki units are no longer threatened, and with a final bite from Seraphon, the damage Arkan just took will be triggering army losses. With that, the Dark Elves will be securing their victory, giving Chief a win in the 5th game of the series. With the 5th game and the final game concluded, that means that Chief will be securing victory in this best of 5 series between him and the Chosen One. GG to both players for bringing such exciting games to the community, and congrats to Chief for winning this best of 5. Now for the army performances, the mass infantry of the Dark Elves were able to overwhelm the rather narrow front line of the Tomb Kings, and with the nice mobility protecting the missile troops from the dive bombings of the Carrions, and then the Reaper Bolt Throwers were able to shut down the Screaming Skull catapults and do damage to the Sepulchral Stalkers. Basically, the Dark Elves have a total domination in the missile gameplay. And without any bombardments to hinder them, the Dark Shards are able to freely shoot at whatever constructs they can find, which are the Sepulchral Stalkers at the beginning and the Ushapti Summon at the end. Malekith himself doesn't even need to do much here, just sitting back, dropping Soul Stealer here and there, and probably dive bombing some of the Tomb King's troops, but not really needing to close into the front line, as the Sepulchral Stalkers would eat him alive with those eye lasers, literally boring holes with their gaze. But with the mass infantry pushing for the backline of the Tomb Kings and the Sepulchral Stalkers being pressured, they were not able to push up and snipe out Malekith. As for the Tomb Kings' performances, the Tomb Guards did okay holding back a lot of the Dread Spears, Bleak Swords and whatnot, but they are not exactly great at dishing out the damage, so damage value is rather limited. Screaming Skull catapults got shut down early by the precision fire, and unfortunately without that kind of anti-infantry damage output, the crappy infantry of the Tomb Kings, the Skeleton Warriors and Spears, simply cannot win against the mass Dark Elf infantry, the Dread Spears and Bleak Swords. The Nehekral Horsemen tried to shut down the Dark Shards, but a nice countercharge from the Dark Riders stopped them in their tracks. Carrions tried to dive bomb the Dark Shards and the Reaper Bolt Throwers, but Again, countercharge from the Dark Riders eliminated them extremely fast, and they were not able to do much damage as well. And Arkan the Black did some nice damage to Malekith with the Spirit Leeches, but unfortunately, Malekith can simply heal all that up with the spam of Soul Stealer. That's basically the end of the entire Best of 5 series between Chief and the Chosen One. Now to quickly sum up the 5 games. In the first battle, Chief tried to attempt an Empire box against the Chosen One's Warriors of Chaos army, but the Chosen One very skillfully using a diversion attack, attacking one side of the box, forcing Chief to invest resources and attention to deal with the threat, leaving the other side of the box vulnerable, and as a result, the box was cracked. In the second battle, it was a Skaven mirror match, and Chosen One came out on top with a superior mobility forces composed of red ogres and a lot of wolf rats dominating the battlefield with more control. In the third battle, Chief was able to claw back one victory with a very favorable matchup for the High Elves here fighting against Chosen One ogres. The staunch line of spears combined with a devastating volley of arrow fire largely suppressed the bulky ogres' attacks. In the fourth battle, the Wood Elves managed to swarm the Dark Elves with their sheer numbers. Dryads, Eternal Gods, and Glade Riders all trade very well into the Dark Elf Light Infantry, and of course with all these high model count units, the infamous Cheese Runner Chariots were not able to maximize their damage. And in the final game, Chief's Dark Elves versus Chosen One's Tomb Kings, the artillery fight massively went in favor of the Dark Elves who have their Reaper Bolt throwers, while the Screaming Skull catapults of the Tomb Kings were methodically dismantled by their precision firepower. With the anti-infantry firepower gone, Tomb King simply has no options to deal with a swarm of Dark Elf infantry. And that's it for this Best of 5 series. Viewers, I hope you enjoy, and if you do and want to see more, be sure to subscribe to the channel and keep an eye out for new videos. I'll be covering more tournament battles over the next few weeks in Tournament Spotlights. Anyways, that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich signing out.